Hello, my name is Annalise Miller, and in this presentation I will be covering Sylvia Rivera, a Latina transgender activist and pioneer of the LGBTQ+ movement. Rivera was born in New York City in 1951. Her mother was Venezuelan and her father was Puerto Rican. She was born Ray Rivera. When Sylvia was only 3 years old, her mother took her own life, leaving Sylvia to be raised by her grandmother, who disapproved of her feminine behavior. At 11 years old, Sylvia ran away from home to be herself and was living on the streets of New York. To survive, she became a child prostitute on 42nd Street. While this was a dangerous time with much police brutality and discrimination, it was also where she found her true family, other street queens who were struggling to survive. In the 60s, police would regularly raid bars and beat up anyone who didn't dress according to their assigned gender. In June 1969, the police raided the Stonewall Inn, but this time the community fought back. After Stonewall, the movement grew fast. However, the new gay liberation groups wanted to distance themselves from poor, non-white, gender non-conforming individuals. They wanted to look respectable, and Sylvia didn't fit into that image. In 1970, Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson founded the STAR organization, which stood for Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries. It was the first organization in the United States led by trans women of color to help homeless transgender youth. They opened the Star House in a rented apartment. Sylvia and Marsha would often go back to prostitution to pay rent and buy food for the homeless kids living there. At only 19 years old, Sylvia became a mother to many of the residents at the Star House. While this was short-lived, it was a safe space for those who needed it. One of Sylvia's most famous moments was at the 1973 Pride Rally, where she gave her gay power speech. The crowd tried to boo her off stage. She shouted, "Y'all better quiet down." She called them out for ignoring their brothers and sisters in jail and on the streets. After her 1973 Pride Rally speech, Sylvia felt heartbroken. The movement she helped start was pushing her out because she was too loud and too radical. Deeply hurt and struggling with addiction, she left New York City and the movement behind for many years, moving to Tarrytown, New York. In 1992, her best friend Marsha P. Johnson was found dead in the Hudson River. The police ruled it a suicide. However, Sylvia and the community believed it was a hate crime. Marsha's death brought Sylvia back to New York and back to activism. By 1996, Rivera had returned to New York City. Even though she was a famous pioneer of the movement, she was homeless. She lived in a small handmade shelter on the Christopher Street piers. She stayed there to be close to the young queer people who also had nowhere else to go. Sylvia Rivera became a mother to the homeless youth living there. She protected them from the police and shared what little she had. Her experiences while being homeless made her more focused on advocating for those she felt left behind by society and by the gay community. In 2000, photographer Valerie Schaff took several famous portraits of Sylvia. The photos were taken on a makeshift encampment by the Hudson River. Rivera was living there at the time in protest of the mainstream gay organizations and community groups, ignoring the needs of local homeless youth and transgender individuals. Right up until the end of her life, Sylvia never stopped organizing. She relaunched her group STAR in 2001 to fight for transgender rights, inclusion in the LGBTQ+ movement, and for social justice for those who are marginalized. In her last years, Sylvia fought against an act called SOWK-1010. This law protected sexual orientation but ignored gender identity and expression. Sylvia protested loudly and fought to have trans individuals included in the act. Unfortunately, the act passed in 2002 without trans. Even while battling liver cancer, Sylvia never stopped. She spent her final months fighting for the transgender rights bill in New York City. She wanted to make sure the next generation of street queens would have the legal protection she never had. Rivera passed away on February 19, 2002, at the age of 50 from liver cancer. On the day of her death, while bedridden, Rivera met with Empire State Pride Agenda delegates to advocate for trans rights in the pending SOWK-1010 bill, which they had been excluded from. Today, the Sylvia Rivera Law Project continues her legacy, working so all people are free to self-determine their gender identity and expression, regardless of income or race, and without facing harassment, discrimination, or violence. Thank you so much for watching my presentation on Sylvia Rivera. I hope her story inspires you to always stand up for what is right, even when it's difficult. And these are the resources that I use to get my information and the photos of Sylvia Rivera.